I just found out my wife cheated on me with her best friend's brother, then secretly transferred $150, $0 from our joint account to his new LLC. Now she's denying everything and threatening to take everything in court over our house and savings. I never thought I'd find myself in a situation like this. Honestly, who does? One minute everything's normal. My wife, Lisa, was her usual bitchy, demanding self, but I thought that was just her personality. We'd been together for 8 years, married for 5, and I always figured we had a decent life. She's a sharp, attractive woman used to getting her way, and I was the guy who believed in loyalty and honesty. But then, out of nowhere, everything changed. I found out she was cheating on me with her best friend's brother, and she had secretly transferred $150, $0 from our joint account into some LLC he set up. That's when the whole world turned upside down. It started with little things. She became more distant, secretive about her phone, hiding her texts. I noticed her spending more time on her laptop, always closing it quickly when I entered the room. She'd get defensive if I asked about her whereabouts or who she was talking to. I brushed it off at first, telling myself she was just busy with work or stressed about something. But then I saw the signs weren't just minor, they were glaring. She'd leave her phone around, but I'd catch her deleting messages. Her stories about her days didn't add up anymore. And the worst part, I caught her in a lie one night when I looked at her phone and saw a message from her supposed best friend, talking about how she was finally free and ready for something real, with a wink emoji. That was the first real sign I couldn't ignore. One day, I decided to check our bank account. I don't usually do that. Lisa's always been the one managing the finances, but something pushed me to look closer, and that's when I saw it. A transfer of $150, $0 to this LLC called LJ Enterprises, which I'd never heard of. My stomach sank. I immediately looked up the LLC and it was registered under her sister's name, but I knew who the real beneficiary was. It was her, or at least her new partner in crime. The money was gone just like that, transferred in the dead of night. I couldn't believe it. My wife, who always acted so perfect, was secretly funneling our savings into some shady business with her lover. My mind raced. How long had this been going on? How could she do something so reckless? I felt numb. It was like I'd been hit in the chest with a sledgehammer. I kept replaying everything. The little lies, the secretive behavior, the late nights. I knew I had to confront her. I didn't want to believe it, but the evidence was staring me in the face. I remembered the way she snapped at me when I asked her about her phone that evening. Her voice was sharp, almost hostile. I had never seen her like that before. I decided I'd confront her the next day, but I couldn't sleep. The betrayal hit me hard. I felt a mixture of anger, sadness, and confusion swirling inside. How could she betray me like this? And what the hell was she planning to do with all that money? I couldn't help but think about the future, about everything we had built. The house, the savings, our plans, and how it was all now hanging in the balance. That night I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to process what I'd just uncovered. Part of me wanted to scream, to break something, to yell at her until she confessed everything. But I knew she'd deny everything, as she always did when caught in a lie. Still, I was determined to get to the bottom of it. I had to know how deep this went, what she was capable of. The next morning, I woke up with a plan forming in my head. I'd confront her face to face, demand answers, and decide what to do from there. But I also knew I needed to be careful. She was manipulative, bitchy when cornered, and wouldn't go down without a fight. I couldn't just accuse her outright. I had to be strategic. As I prepared myself for the confrontation, I couldn't help but feel a strange mixture of heartbreak and rage. This wasn't just about money or infidelity anymore. It was about trust, respect, and the life I thought I knew. How could she lie so convincingly? How could she risk everything we had for some guy's brother? And most of all, how was I supposed to move forward from this? I didn't have all the answers yet, but I knew one thing: I wasn't going down without a fight. I wasn't going to let her ruin me or take everything we built. She might think she can lie her way out of this, but I was determined to get to the truth, no matter what it took. The moment I saw the transfer on the bank statement, I knew my life was about to change forever. I sat there, staring at the screen, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. $150, $0 gone in a blink, funneled into some LLC I'd never heard of. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. My mind raced, trying to piece together what this meant. Was she planning to run? Was she already gone? I couldn't believe she'd risk everything, our house, our savings, our future, just for some guy's brother. It was like a punch to the gut, and I knew I had to confront her immediately. I called her that morning, knowing she'd be home soon. My hands were trembling as I dialed her number. When she answered, her voice was chipper too chipper. "Hey babe, what's up?" she asked, acting normal like she didn't have a care in the world. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. "Lisa, we need to talk," I said, my voice tight. "I saw the transfer, explain it to me." There was a pause on the other end. I could hear her take a breath, then she started with her usual tone. "It's nothing, just some business deal I was working on. You're overthinking it." That's when I lost it. I told her I wasn't stupid, that I knew she'd been lying about her whereabouts, about her texts, about everything. I demanded the truth. Her reaction was classic. She got defensive, started throwing out excuses. "Oh, you're paranoid. You're just jealous. It's none of your business." But I wasn't buying it anymore. I told her I knew she'd been cheating, that I had proof. Her face twisted into a sneer and she snapped, "You think I'd do something like that? You're accusing me of cheating, and now you're accusing me of stealing." Her voice was venomous, full of anger. Everything, even the obvious. She said I was crazy, that she'd never do something so reckless, so stupid. But I had the evidence and I wasn't backing down. I told her I wanted her to come clean or I'd start digging deeper. What followed was a whirlwind of accusations, tears, and shouting. She kept insisting she loved me, that she'd never cheat or steal from us. She played the victim, saying I was just jealous and insecure, but I could see through her lies. I knew she'd been lying all along. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and furious. How could she do this to me, to us? I thought about everything, our house, our savings, the plans we'd made, and it all felt like it was slipping away. I was angry at her, yes, but also at myself for not seeing it sooner. How could I have been so blind? After hours of arguing, she finally stormed out of the house, screaming that I was ruining everything, that she'd take me to court if I tried to stop her. I was left standing there, feeling hollow, like the ground had been pulled from under my feet. I knew I couldn't just let her walk away with everything. I had to do something. I decided I'd start by gathering all the evidence I could: bank statements, texts, emails. I needed proof, not just for myself, but for whatever might come next. I also realized I couldn't trust her anymore, not even a little bit. The woman I thought I knew was gone, replaced by someone I didn't recognize. I felt a cold, bitter emptiness inside, knowing that my marriage was on the brink of collapse. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying everything she said and did. The lies, the sneaking around, the money transfer, it all felt like a nightmare. I wondered how I'd let it get this far, how I'd been so blind. And I also wondered what I was going to do now. Part of me wanted to confront her again, demand she tell me everything, lay everything bare. But another part knew it was going to get ugly. I had to be careful. She was manipulative and bitchy when pressed, and I didn't want to give her any reason to spin more lies or turn things against me. I knew I had to plan my next move carefully. In the end, I realized that trust was shattered beyond repair. I couldn't look at her the same way anymore. Every glance, every word now felt like a lie. I felt betrayed on every level, emotionally, financially, and morally. But I also knew I had to stay calm, think clearly, and figure out how to protect what was mine. I didn't want to be a victim, but I also didn't want to be naive. This was a wake-up call, a brutal lesson in how betrayal can creep in when you least expect it. I told myself I'd get through this somehow. I owed it to myself to find the truth and decide what's next, whether that's fighting for the marriage or walking away. Either way, I knew my life was about to change forever. The next few days felt like walking through a fog. I couldn't shake the feeling that everything I thought I knew about Lisa was a lie. She was manipulative, bitchy, and she had no problem lying outright to my face. I started digging into the bank transactions more, pulling every document I could find. I hired a private investigator just to see if I could get any more concrete proof of her affair or what she was planning to do with that money. I knew she'd deny everything as she always did, but I needed something solid. Meanwhile, Lisa kept texting me trying to spin her story. She'd call me paranoid, accuse me of mistrusting her without reason. She'd scream she loved me, that I was overreacting, and that I was just jealous of her success. That's her favorite line: "I work hard, I deserve this," she'd say, referring to the money transfer. But I wasn't buying it. There was something dirty about the whole thing. The fact she secretly transferred that much money into some LLC with her sister's name and then lied about it told me everything I needed to know. She was hiding something. I started to feel a mixture of anger and disappointment. How could she betray me like this? After all these years, she'd been lying right to my face. I thought about the house, our savings, everything we'd built. She was willing to throw it all away for some guy, brother. That thought made my stomach turn. I also felt betrayed by myself. How did I not see this coming? I should have known she was capable of this kind of deception. I'd always considered her ambitious, but now I saw her as selfish and reckless. One night I decided to confront her again, but this time with more preparation. I gathered all the evidence I had: bank statements, her messages, the transfer details, and set up a meeting at a neutral location. I wanted to hear her explain herself face to face. I knew she'd deny everything, but I also wanted to watch her reactions, see if she slipped up. When she arrived, her face was cold and she tried to act normal, like she wasn't caught red-handed. I laid everything out on the table. I told her I knew about the transfer, about her affair, and the lies she'd been telling me. Her eyes widened for a second, then she scoffed and started with her usual bullshit. "You're crazy," she said. "This is all a misunderstanding. Someone must have hacked our account, or you're just making things up because you're insecure." She looked genuinely angry, like she thought I was the one at fault. I could see the bitchy edge in her eyes. She was trying to turn the tables, make me look like the bad guy. I didn't back down. I told her I had proof, and I wasn't leaving until she was honest. She got defensive, started yelling that I was accusing her of everything just because I was jealous of her success and her new business ventures. I knew she was trying to manipulate me, to make me doubt myself, but I also knew I couldn't let her gaslight me anymore. I wanted her to admit the truth, even if it was hard to hear. I was tired of her lies, tired of feeling like I was losing my mind. That confrontation ended with her storming out again, screaming she'd take me to court over the house and the savings. I was left sitting there, furious and hurt, realizing this wasn't going to be resolved easily. I had to prepare for a fight, financially, legally, emotionally. I started to think about what I needed to do to protect myself. I contacted a lawyer, started gathering more evidence, and even looked into my options for separating if it came to that. I knew Lisa wouldn't go quietly. She was the kind of woman who would burn everything down just to get her way. The emotional toll was immense. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and angry. I kept asking myself how I missed the signs, how I let her get away with this for so long. But I also kept telling myself I wasn't going to be the victim here. I was going to fight for what was mine: the house, the savings, my dignity. I had to accept that this relationship was probably over, but I was determined to come out of this with some sense of control. I couldn't let her ruin me completely. I knew I had to stay strong, even if every part of me was breaking inside. In the days that followed, I kept a close eye on everything: bank accounts, her movements, her messages. I didn't trust her anymore. Every time she tried to apologize or sweet-talk her way back into my good graces, I pushed back harder. I realized that trusting her again was impossible now. She lied too many times, crossed too many lines. I felt like I'd been sucker punched, but at the same time I was starting to see clearly. She wasn't the woman I thought she was. She was manipulative, selfish, and willing to betray everything for her own gain. This whole ordeal taught me a lot about trust and betrayal. I learned that sometimes the person you love the most can turn out to be the biggest liar. I also learned that money can be a powerful weapon. She used it to hide her affair, to buy her way out of trouble, and to potentially destroy what little stability we had left. I realized I needed to be smarter, more cautious. I couldn't just rely on my feelings anymore. I had to protect myself, my future, and what was left of my dignity. I didn't know what was coming next, but I was ready to face it head on. The days turned into a blur of legal consultations, covert surveillance, and endless nights of insomnia. I was trying to piece together everything, her lies, the money, the affair, and figure out my next move. I knew I couldn't just confront her again without solid proof. She was a master at twisting words and turning everything around. My lawyer advised me to document everything, bank statements, text messages, her movements, and to prepare for a possible divorce or court battle. I felt like I was walking a tightrope, trying to stay calm while everything was falling apart around me. Lisa, of course, kept up her act. She'd call and text, accusing me of being paranoid, saying I was obsessed with her. She'd throw in some tears, some fake apologies, trying to make me believe she was innocent. But I saw through her. I knew she was lying, and I wasn't going to be manipulated anymore. I started to realize that her whole persona was built on lies and deception. She was bitchy and manipulative, always trying to control the narrative. Now I saw her for what she truly was, a woman willing to betray everything for her own selfish needs. One day, I decided to follow her. I needed to see if she was really telling the truth about her whereabouts or if she was sneaking around behind my back. I parked a few blocks away, keeping a safe distance, and watched her go into a with. They sat close, whispering and laughing, and I felt a surge of rage. That was the proof I needed, that she was actively hiding her affair. I also caught her texting her lover later that day, and her messages confirmed she was planning to transfer more money into the LLC. It was clear. She was trying to cover her tracks, but I had enough now. I felt a mix of disgust and heartbreak. I'd loved her once, believed in us, and now I saw that she'd been playing me all along. The betrayal cut deep, but I also felt a strange sense of clarity. I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. I had to act. I started preparing my case for the divorce, gathering every piece of evidence I had. I also contacted a forensic accountant who could trace the money trail and help me understand exactly how much she'd taken and where it was going. I knew she'd fight me tooth and nail to keep what she wanted, but I was ready. In the midst of all this chaos, she made one last attempt to manipulate me. She showed up at my office, crying, saying she was sorry, that she loved me, and begging me to forgive her. She said she'd end the affair, transfer the money back, and do whatever it took to save our marriage. But I saw through it. I knew it was just her way of stalling, of trying to keep control. I told her I needed time to think, that I wasn't going to be fooled again. I was done trusting her. I wanted out, and I was going to make sure I protected myself financially and emotionally. That night, I stayed up late, going over everything I'd learned. I felt betrayed, angry, but also strangely relieved. The woman I thought I knew was gone. I realized I'd been living in a fantasy, believing that our marriage was solid when in reality, she was already planning her escape. The money, the affair, the lies, they all pointed to one thing. I had to get out before she destroyed me completely. I started making plans to consult a divorce lawyer and to protect what was mine. I knew she'd fight me, but I also knew I had enough evidence now to prove her deception. I sat there, staring at the pile of documents and screenshots, feeling exhausted but determined. I couldn't let her win. I had to take control of my life again. The betrayal had shattered my trust, but I refused to let it break me. I'd learned that sometimes the people closest to you can be the most dangerous, hiding their true selves behind a mask. I knew I'd be okay one way or another. I just had to keep pushing forward no matter how much it hurt. I was tired of feeling like a victim, tired of the lies, tired of the betrayal. It was time to fight back, and I was ready. After I collected enough evidence, I knew I had to act fast. Lisa was relentless in her manipulations, but I couldn't let her keep spinning her lies forever. I contacted my lawyer and scheduled a meeting. I needed to understand my options, how to protect the house, the savings, and get her accountable for the money she transferred. The lawyer looked over everything I had, including the bank statements, her texts, and the proof of the transfer to the LLC. His face was grim, but he told me I had a solid case for repossession of the funds and for divorce if I decided to go that route. Meanwhile, Lisa's behavior grew more erratic. She'd call me trying to guilt me into dropping everything, saying she was sorry, that she'd do anything to fix what she broke. But I knew better. Her apologies sounded hollow, her tears fake. I could see the bitchy glint in her eyes every time she tried to manipulate me. She was desperate to keep her grip on the house and her money, and I refused to be her puppet anymore. I told her I was done playing her game and that I was serious about ending this mess. I wanted everything out in the open. No more hiding, no more lies. One afternoon, she showed up at the house unexpectedly, acting remorseful and pretending to be the victim. She said she'd realized how much she loved me and how she'd made a terrible mistake. She begged me to forgive her, to give her another chance. I looked her straight in the eyes and told her she had no idea what she'd done, that I'd found her affair, her lies, her money trail, and that I wasn't going to let her get away with it. I told her I was filing for divorce and that she'd have to face the consequences. Her face twisted with anger. She called me crazy, said I was ruining everything, screamed she'd fight me in court. But I was done listening to her bullshit. I started to prepare myself for the legal battle ahead. I knew she'd try to drag this out, delay everything, and maybe even threaten to take me to court over the house and our savings. That's when I decided to hire a forensic accountant to trace the money and a private investigator to keep tabs on her. I wanted to be one step ahead of her manipulations. I also made copies of every document, screenshot, and transaction I could find. I wasn't going to let her spin her way out of this, not anymore. This was about justice, about protecting what was mine. Emotionally, I felt drained but also strangely liberated. The betrayal was like a weight lifted, knowing I finally had the proof I needed. I'd trusted her once, and she'd betrayed that trust in the worst way. But I also realized that I couldn't keep living in this lie. I had to focus on rebuilding my life, no matter how painful it was. I was angry at her for what she'd done, but I was also angry at myself for not seeing it sooner. I had to accept that our marriage was over, and I had to start thinking about the future, alone but free from her manipulations. The nights were the hardest. I'd lie awake, replaying everything, feeling the sting of betrayal, but I kept reminding myself that I had to stay strong. I had to protect myself, my future, and what little dignity I had left. I knew she'd fight to keep the house and the money, but I was prepared. I had enough evidence to prove her deception, and I was willing to go to court if necessary. I wasn't going to let her take everything I worked for without a fight. I'd been naive once, but not anymore. Now I understood that some people are willing to betray everything just for their own selfish gains. So I started making plans. I set aside money for legal fees, contacted the divorce lawyer, and began to organize my documents. I knew this was only the beginning of a long battle, but I was ready. I'd faced her bitchy, manipulative side, and I'd seen her true colors. I'd be damned if I let her walk away with everything. I was tired of being the victim, tired of feeling powerless. Now I was taking control, one step at a time. I didn't know exactly how it would end, but I knew I wouldn't go down without a fight. And honestly, that realization felt like a small victory in itself. The court date finally came, and I felt like I was walking into a battlefield. All the evidence I'd gathered, the bank statements, her texts, the proof of the transfer, was laid out before the judge. Lisa showed up, her bitchy smirk still plastered on her face, trying to act innocent and above it all. She spun her usual lies, claiming I was paranoid, that she'd never do something so stupid. But I had the proof, and I was determined to make her see that her manipulations wouldn't get her anywhere this time. The hearing was intense. Lisa's lawyer tried to argue that I had no right to the money, that she was entitled to keep the house and her savings, even with the affair and the transfer. But my lawyer shot back with everything I had: proof of the affair, the illicit transfer, her lies. The judge listened carefully, reviewing all the documents. It was a long process, but I could see her confidence starting to crack. She was no longer the bitchy, manipulative woman she'd been. Instead, she looked cornered, angry, and desperate. In the end, the judge ruled in my favor. The transfer of the $150, $0 was ordered to be returned, and Lisa was ordered to pay me a substantial settlement for the emotional distress and financial deception. The house was awarded to me, and she was given a strict court order to stay away from our bank accounts and assets. I felt a strange mix of relief and exhaustion. After months of betrayal, lies, and manipulation, justice was finally served. But it wasn't just about the money. It was about reclaiming my life, my dignity, and my future. Lisa was furious. She screamed and yelled outside the courtroom, calling me every name in the book, saying I was a jealous, paranoid fool. She threatened to fight me in court again, to take everything she could. But I didn't care anymore. I knew I'd done everything I could to defend myself, to protect what was mine. I walked out of that courtroom feeling lighter, like a huge weight had been lifted. I had survived her betrayal, and I had won the fight to keep what was left of my life. In the weeks that followed, I focused on rebuilding. I sold the house, moved into a smaller place, and started to piece my life back together. I cut all ties with Lisa, refusing to let her manipulate me anymore. I learned that trust, once broken, is nearly impossible to repair. But I also learned that you can survive betrayal if you're willing to fight for it. I realized that my worth isn't determined by her lies or her manipulations, but by how I choose to move forward. Looking back, I see how much I was blinded by love, but I also see how strong I became in the end. I learned to be cautious, to trust my instincts, and to never ignore the signs of betrayal again. Money, trust, loyalty, all fragile things that can be shattered in an instant. But I also learned that sometimes the only way to reclaim your life is to face the chaos head-on, stand your ground, and fight for what's rightfully yours. I may have been betrayed, but I am not defeated. And I will never let someone like Lisa destroy me again. This entire experience has changed me forever, but it's also made me stronger. I now know what to look out for, how to protect myself, and most importantly, I've learned that even in the darkest times, there's a way to come out on top. I've been betrayed, lied to, and hurt deeply, but I've also found my strength in the process. And that's something no one can ever take away from me.